Mr. Pond Boss, tell me what to do to make all my longer leg dreams come true.
Hello everybody, must be Tuesday, and I'm where I can actually broadcast this time. No internet problems, no going to birthday parties, just being able to hang out with you and just chit chat. So, welcome. Looks like we got one viewer. Can't wait to see who that is. Show up. We got a little bit of fun. You know, when Leanne posted last week that I was going to go to a restaurant, let's see what she said. I got my little phone here reading it. Bob will not be broadcasting. Yep, that's right. And I was kidnapped. Wasn't totally against my will, but still, kidnapped, right? So then she said, what questions would you like to have answered? Well, I'm so glad she did that because you got some pretty darn good ones. So you guys start chiming in. Let me know who's here. I like to say hello to everybody. I know some of you just want to lurk. I get that. There's Jim Allen. I'm going to get to hang out with this guy. He is so much fun. He's an engineer. Jim Allen he's more than an engineer. He has an entrepreneurial spirit, and he loves nature. And when you put those two things together in a blender, amazing things happen. So he and I are going to have a little fun. Actually, he's going to make a little short presentation on how to use the Pond Boss spreadsheet that I'm going to tell you, he took the skeleton of it and he created a living thing from it. And it's so cool to be able to see that. Hello, John Harson, Jason Dodd, checking in from Wichita, Kansas. So I was going back through the questions that you guys asked after Leanne posted last week. I'm going to start with Dave Davidson. What would you like to talk about? Rain dances. I've known Dave for probably 25 years. He was one of the first members of the Pond Boss forum at pondboss.com. Oh, by the way, Pond Boss. $35 a year. Cheaper than a Friday night date, and it lasts a year. Oh, John Harson beat me to it. You knew. Admit it. You knew. Yep. Well, it is cheaper than a Friday night. Hello, Mark Dyer. Can't wait to hang out with you. You're gonna be at the Institute of Higher Pondology, as is Jim Allen. You two guys are gonna get to meet each other. It's gonna be a whole lot of fun. Yes, you did. Stop bragging. So anyway, I want to go through some of these questions. Leanne Holtzbauer, if I remember right, I think she lives in Nebraska. She wants to know about aeration during the fall and winter if needed. So here, let me give you my take on that. Hello, David Schnaderman. Sharmus Blank, what are your thoughts on feeding fish in winter in northwest Kansas? If they'll eat it, feed it. If they won't eat it, don't feed it. So I don't know what kind of fish you're talking about. Like, for example, feeding bluegills, they really slow down at 46. Plus, you guys there in northwest Kansas kind of have this thing called ice. Anytime we see ice around here, it's in a glass of tea. You know, Bird Dog, one of my sponsors. BirdDogIt.com. I know the guy that owns it. Jason Dodd, I would ask you an interesting question, but it might make you scratch your head like every... Dude, stop. You know what? Or you like call me out? Or it's like, dude, you don't know what you're talking about, Bob Lusk. I mean, you might have to actually think about something. Pitch it out there, dude. John got a Texas Hunter feeder. Yeah, come on, Jason. Come on. Oh, yeah, Christopher Aguilar, the Boudin man from South Louisiana. He reminded me to say, hashtag Pond Boss Magazine, click like, share this video to your timeline, and you're eligible for a drawing for a hat. I should have a hat, but I don't. Every time I get some hats here, I give them away or sell them, or something happens to them. I don't know what happens. Okay, so Leanne Holtzbauer wants some aeration about during the fall and the winter. Okay, let me tell you about this. Holy cow, fake it till you make it, Bob. I do that all the time. It's just the big difference between me and you is I've been doing it longer than you have. Okay, Jim, I have been talking to those guys till my throat went dry about largemouth bass pellets. My gut is that they're going to bring them back because what they don't realize is what it's costing them. So they've got this young buck guy oh, I don't care if that's politically correct or not. I'm just going to stay with it. That is looking at SKUs, and the more he looks at the SKUs, he's looking at volume of sales. But what he doesn't realize is some of those SKUs have symbiosis. He has no idea what that word means, with other products that are in that lineup of fish foods that Purina's got. Hello, Mike Cottrell. So, and you know what? I know what Jim Allen does. He's standing on his balcony with a slingshot, and he throws those big pellets out there and watches the catfish eat them. I've seen him do that. Oh, let's get back to this question before you guys take me off down La Lane. Aeration during the fall and winter. Here's my take on aeration. You need aeration going on. There's really two reasons to have aeration. The number one most important part, and I'm talking about diffused aeration. Diffused aeration moves the water enough to help it expedite its opportunity to cleanse itself. That's what it does. Now, a lot of folks think that it's more about adding oxygen to the water, which that absolutely does play a role, but the main job of diffused aeration is to help water cleanse itself, especially in northern tier ponds or midwestern ponds, to get them ready to go into the wintertime. So, just for the strict purpose of aerating to process water or add oxygen, doesn't need to happen once the temperature drops below 55. If you've run that aeration system properly, all spring, summer, whenever you need it to in the fall, and then you can shut it off when the water temperature hits 55. Now, if you're in an area prone to winter kill, then you want a little different strategy, and it kind of depends on your circumstance. I love this one. Dave Weber from up there at northwestern Missouri. I might need to holler at Dave. I'm going to be up, not totally up that way, but I'm going to be not far from there. What are the dangers of putting too much fish habitat and structure in your pond? The biggest danger and the biggest problem putting in too much fish habitat and structure is your back will hurt. That's the biggest problem. I have not met but maybe one lake out of gazillions, maybe hundreds or whatever many number, that I look at where I think somebody's added too much structure. It just doesn't happen. So I'm going to stick with that answer. Most of the time, people don't put in enough. Most of the time. Hello, Chuck. Mike Cottrell got that hashtag Palm Moss Magazine going on. Steve Alexander is up in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. I texted him a while ago and told him I wanted to tackle his question. So I don't think he'll be able to get on, but that's fine. He can hear it later. So his question was harvest. How to manage harvest after you introduce new genetics. There it is right there. See it? Steve Alexander right there. And he says, assuming you aren't adding subadults or adults that are attacked, how do you manage harvest after you introduce new genetics? So in other words, what he's basically saying is yeah, John Harson, dude, I will get to that question in a minute. I'm going to slam the door on the trapdoor snails. A vodka tonic. I know you're thinking about it, especially Harson. Okay, so when you introduce new genetics, so where I typically see that is a pond that's been existing. The landowner didn't want to take out the fishery and reset, start over. Wanted to manage it. So what they do, what my advice has been, is that you go in and you harvest as many fish as you need to get the predator numbers down so you can build the prey numbers up. And then when you do that, then you bring in, some pure strain Florida bass or some F1, whatever your choice is to enhance the genetics. So basically what Steve's saying is, how do you keep from taking out the fish you just stopped? That's basically what he's saying. So here's what I'm going to tell you. I believe firmly, after 45 years of doing this, that 20 to 25% of the fish, regardless of their genetics, are going to excel in your body of water. So when you're looking at fish to harvest, my best recommendation is to weigh and measure a bunch of fish and look and see what your best performers are. You're going to find out that you've got a few fish that are in that 100, 110, 120, 130 percentile relative weight. And if you do, those fish have figured out how to play the game in your lake. They deserve a shot at it. So if you've got some genetically superior fish, but you get down the road a few years and you can't tell what they are, one thing you can certainly do is see how well all the fish are performing, and you remove the underperformers and the males. And that's going to hold true for largemouth bass. It's going to hold true for smallmouth bass, walleye. Pretty much all the predator fish that you might have a chance to manage for. So that's my answer to that question. So Scott Schillig lives up in northern Indiana. How about the importance of cover in largemouth bass bluegill ponds? What quantity, size, and density of cover, the placement of said cover, and what depths is it important to have said cover in northern... Damn, this is a legal brief. In northern ponds that may see 2 to 3 months or more of surface water temperatures from 32 F to 40 degrees F. Okay, so what he's basically saying is he has cold water. Duh, northern Indiana. So what's quantity? Okay, so the quantity of cover, I'm going to tell you 20 to 25%, no more than 30% of a pond in northern waters needs to have some kind of structure cover centered around spawning beds, which I believe that in ponds all over North America. And even if Scotty Tucker's listening down and under in Australia, same thing there. Although he's got different fish. That's a different part of the world there. So the temperature of the water is significant, but I'm going to tell you this. In northern Indiana, you pretty much have the same number of largemouth bass growing days anybody else in the nation has, except for the higher elevations, maybe like in Colorado. So you've got about 125 perfect bass growing days. What you don't have is very many days to grow the bait fish to make those bass get big. So I do think that you need to have underwater communities of habitat and cover that covers 20, 25, up to 30% of a pond designed for those species of fish that you want to stock. So let's see here. Let me see here. I'm going to look back and see what you guys are doing so I don't get too far. John Arson, did I pond? Yeah, I ponded the Japanese trapdoor snails. I'm going to slam the door on those. No, there's no reason to have them. They don't serve any socially redeeming values in a pond, which maybe you might try to sell me, which I suspect you will. It won't work. But why in the hell would you have Japanese trapdoor snails? Did they come across the south border too? Oh my. Jim Allen, I've been trying to find plans for pallet fish structure for catfish, bass, and crappie. Didn't see on the form any leads. You know what? I don't have any videos for that. But I'll tell you this. Way back in the day, I worked with a soil conservation service biologist who's got to be 85 now, Ed Schwilly. If Gary Valentine checks in, he will hear this and see it. But Ed Schwilly was the first guy to ever turn me on to what to do with pallet fish structures. The first thing about pallet fish structures is they're easy to get. You can get pallets. But basically what he did was he nailed them together one at a time to stack them. Which, for catfish, bass, and crappie, the only thing that pallets stacked like that, nailed together like a 15-story building, is the bait fish that it attracts, which is limited. What I'd much rather see are pallets that are shaped like pyramids. Although, most pyramids they're four-sided, but you can attach them. What you're looking for is the what do they call it? Oh hell, there's a name for the space in between stuff. That's what you're looking for. So now here's something else about trying to design any kind of cover, structure, habitat for fish, is you want it to cover more. Interstitial. That's the word I was looking for. Interstitial space. That's a big deal. You want it to have, rather than having it, compact and dense, which is great for bait fish, but if you want to attract all fish, give yourself a much more space. Jason Dodd. Last week I caught 2 largemouth bass. Both were 13.5 inches long. Their body shape looked very similar. One was more olive green in color, 1.53 pounds. Really? 1.53 pounds? Okay. I know you enough to know that I totally believe that. The other was a little lighter in color but weighed 1.18 pounds. How could 2 fish be the same length, very similar in girth, and weigh so much different? I now have caught 2 fish that just felt like air. Is this what you're trying to stump me with, Jason Dodd? What does air feel like? I guess if it's blowing, you know. If it ain't. So, I don't know if you know, but I'm a naturally born smart aleck. My mama used to get on to me for that. So did my teachers. All right. Well, I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why they weigh so much different. It's no different than Shaquille O'Neal and his little brother. Or maybe you and a sibling. Even though those fish look alike, they were born at the same time, of the same parents, doesn't mean a thing. There's several factors at play here. One is genetics, which that's important. You know, it's going to be more important later after they keep figuring out all the different markers, genetic markers. But some fish, okay, you know what? Here we go, Jason. I know you love cars. I do, but not that much. So if you and I were sitting down talking about cars, you would score like 200 points. I'd get 30. But I can grow better fish than you can. So who's better? Neither one of us. So where I'm going is the olive green fish that weighs 1.53 pounds has been eating really, really well in that environment. It's figured out how to play that game. The fish that weighs 1.18 pounds is the same age. Is just the little sister or the little brother, maybe the little brother. The 1.53 might be a girl and the 1.18 is probably a boy. But they can be the same length and the same girth and the way so much difference. That could be sex. That could be one fish had fish. The big fish had half a pound of meat in its belly, you know, and the other one didn't. The other one digested it. So that really, and if you were to catch those same 2 fish again, next week, it'd be different. That 1.18 pound fish may have a half a pound shad, or maybe it's a little 7-inch brother in its gut. Let's see here. Doug Cusick. I'm late, but I'm here. Hey, Doug, I don't care. I'm just glad you're here. Hello, Dick Tabbert. Ron Krisman, the smallmouth bass king. John Harrison, algae control and red ear food. Yeah, you know what, Jay Havner, R.I.P. Barry Smith. I met Barry Smith, good gosh, probably 1987 or 88. Barry Smith was one of the founding partners. Him and Don Keller started American Sportfish Hatchery back in the 80s. And Barry died of pancreatic cancer just a few days ago, a week or 10 days ago. And he was truly a pioneer in fish production, especially. As I recall, he was the fisheries biologist in the state of Florida working for the state. And he and Don decided that there was a need for them in the private sector. And I'm so glad they did. You know, they're the guys, Barry Smith and Don Keller, those are the guys that invented, created, trademarked the F1 tiger bass. And Barry retired, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago with Don, maybe longer ago than that. And he was truly one of those good guys, you know, that he went to Auburn and studied under, you know, those folks over there, and then put it to work. He did a great job. So adios for now to Barry Smith. I kind of got a feeling that many of our paths will cross again. Algae control and red ear food from John. So algae, okay, so I don't know what you're asking me, but here's what I'm going to tell you. Red ear sunfish eat crustaceans, primarily snails. Well, snails aren't that big of a fan of filamentous algae. So controlling algae, you've got a number of techniques, depending on where you are. If you're in an area that allows you to buy tilapia, I'm all for that. I'm a big fan of tilapia. I'm a big fan of taking algae, filamentous algae, and converting those nutrients into flesh, and then tilapia get eaten by either you or a bass or an eagle if it dies in the fall. So algae control and red ear food. Red ear, the snails typically live more on macrophytic. Ooh, there's your big word for the night. Rooted vegetation more so than it does algae. Jay Hafner, I'm so glad you did that. I'm glad you did that. That was good. Mark Dyer, what's the geographical range of golden shiners and how well do they work as forage? If your lake has them, which species benefit? Okay, so let me tell you, Mark, here's what I'm going to tell you about golden shiners. I don't believe there's a geographical range anymore because golden shiners have been sold as bait fish. If you go to a bait fish store, at least south of the Mason-Dixon line, the 99 times out of 100, those golden shiners came from Anderson Minnow Farm in Lone Oak, Arkansas. They've been selling bait fish since the late 50s or early 60s. They've been at it a long time. I think they're like 3 or 4 generations in. And so, to ask you what their geographical range is, it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, I've seen golden shiners between Rochester and Syracuse, New York, up there on some lakes I was working on back in the early 2000s. Which species benefit the most? I'm going to say hybrid stripers probably benefit the most. They're a good supplemental food for largemouth bass in the right circumstances. I'm a pretty big fan of golden shiners in lakes where the water level fluctuates, more so than I am where lakes don't fluctuate so much. And there's kind of a long story. Oh, hell, we're telling stories. You want to hear it? Let's go. So, what I have learned about golden shiners is a couple of things. The fish farms that raise them, they don't typically have broodstock older than 2 years. So they're creating broodstock every year, and there's several reasons for that. They have a short lifespan. 3 years, 4 years is a long time for a golden shiner. If it gets to be 5 inches long, that's like 90 years old for people. And it's probably a 3 to 4 year old fish. And then they reproduce once a year, sometimes twice a year. They have to have a substrate to lay their eggs, which is grassy substrates like bushy pondweed or Bermuda grass under the water, or I'll counsel clients to put some coastal Bermuda hay, buy some square bales of hay, break them up, and they'll spawn on that. Their main purpose is to feed predator fish, but they're predator fish themselves, limited by their mouth size. They're notably nest raiders. However, that might not be a bad thing if you're bass crowded. So I like to be a little picky as to where I put them, but in lakes that are where the bass are tending toward crowding, which is every bass lake, in lakes that don't fluctuate nearly as much water level wise, I think that's a good place for them. Okay, John Arson, where can I buy pumpkin seeds? You know what? I don't know the answer to that, but I tell you who I'd call, which I'm going to call these guys tomorrow, is Herman Brothers in Peoria, Illinois. If anybody knows where those are, they will know. Reed Gaston, what feed do you recommend for brim? Plant-based or, for brim, if a brim is basically a generic word, it's like saying cow or horse. Do you have a Shetland pony or a thoroughbred? So brim is just a generic word for sunfish. I'm going to presume that you're talking about bluegills because not all brim eat fish food. Red ear won't. Pumpkin seeds won't. Green sunfish will. Bluegill will. But those that will eat fish food are carnivores. So they need animal protein. Specifically, they need fish meal-based fish foods. There's some good fish foods out there with soybean meal, but plant-based protein. And I'm not a nutritionist, but I know some. And the things that those guys have explained to me is that even hydrolyzed soybean protein doesn't have all the amino acids. If it's not getting all the amino acids to build the protein molecules or whatever the hell you call them, they're not going to grow like they should. So, Reed Gaston, here's your bottom line answer. Aquamax, Purina's Aquamax MVP. That's a good feed for sunfish. Jim Allen is having a conversation with Doug. There we go. You guys are pretty cute. Okay, 1.5 to Jason Dodd. The only part of your answer, something happened. The part of your answer saying only may be full of food and one had digested it. There you go. See, dude, you just thought you were going to stump me, although I can't prove that I'm right. Maybe you did. Who knows? Hey, 6:56. I got an email from Chris Blood. They've come out with a brand new dog feeder. You guys need to check that out. Go to Texas Hunter Products. If you have dogs and you want them to be fed consistently, and sometimes you're on a Zoom meeting or something and you can't get to it, check these out. I got the intel on those today. I'm going to put a little blurb and Ask the Boss in the November-December issue of Pond Boss and talk about it. I don't have a big dog, or I'd get one of those feeders. But you just check that out, Texas Hunter Products. And Texas Hunter Products, we're coming into hunting season. They've got all kinds of hunting products, but my main deal is their quality of service, the quality of products, and they're timely. I mean, you can email them, call them, get an instant answer. Those guys are phenomenal. Texas Hunter Products, fish feeders. I love their fish feeders. And, and I've known Chris Blood. Good gosh, Chris, I don't know if you're on here or not. You may be, but golly, man, we've known each other forever. And I'm pretty excited. Hey, Jeremy Day, I talked to the American Sportfish guys today. If you hadn't heard from them, you will soon. So, Bird Dog It. Check out birddogit.com. See that logo? That's it. Now, that's my son, Jonathan, who came up with a pretty darn good idea. About 3 years ago, he called me. He says, hey, Dad, you know what? He was in his late 30s, early 40s. He says, I'm raising these kids. He's got 3 kids that range in age from 6 down to 3, maybe 2. I don't know. I lose track. I've got 13 grandkids. I barely know their names. Debbie didn't hear me say that. But he said, I don't have time to manage a lease. All my running buddies, we're all the same age. We're all going through the same thing. We got soccer games. He says, so if I'm going to go hunting, I need to go like to the Texas Trophy Hunter Show or Texas Wildlife Association or whatever, work with an outfitter because I can't deal, I don't have the time to deal with a lease, and I don't have any friends that own ranches. So he came up with this idea to kind of create a company that's similar in business model to VRBO and Airbnb. So in essence, he goes and courts these different ranches, some of which sell hunts, but most of which don't sell what they need to sell in order to harvest what they need to harvest. Because wildlife, basically, if you look at it from that standpoint, is a crop. Even if it's a low fence area or they're not feeding, they still have a surplus. And so what Jonathan does is he works out opportunities with different ranchers. Some are from primo opportunities, primo experiences, and others are just to help harvest. So he's got a wide right. One of the things I want to do that I haven't done is hunt hogs from a helicopter. So if you guys want to check it out, go to birddogit.com and you can see what I'm talking about. Purina Mills, man, I love to love them and I love to slam them. When the left hand is working with the right hand, we're being able to go across in the crosswalk. But one thing I will always tell you about Purina Mills is those guys have worked hard to come up with the best products to feed your fish. What's irritating is when I hear from like Kenny Sanderson up there, he says, Bob, I can't buy what I need to buy. They won't bring it here. Well, that's a marketing problem. So we have that conversation over and over. But the reality is this. They have some of the best fish foods on the market. And if you can get it, feed it. Good stuff. David Schneiderman, he's on here, at least he was, unless he decided he wanted to go watch Tulsa King or something, or Fox News, which, who wants to do that lately? Easy Docks of Texas. Good stuff. Good stuff. So, hey, you know what? I've got my little Hall of Fame induction coming up in October. And there's a list of people that have been invited. They've only got room for so many folks. And golly, I keep thinking about I'm going to be in the spotlight. So I'm just thankful and blessed and can't wait to hang out. The last time I had all 13 grandkids together was at my daughter's wedding about a year ago. I looked at my wife and I said, honey, you know, the next time we have all 13 of them together, it's probably going to be at a funeral. Well, I thought she was going to hit me. I shouldn't say things like that, but I did. So I'm pretty darn excited to be able to have all my grandkids together and all my kids and everybody. It's going to be fun. So let me see here. Joel, good to see you, buddy. Aerating a pond, does it really matter where the diffusers are located? Yes, it does. You want the diffusers. I tell you what, I don't know when I'm going to, you know what? I'm still working on that book. You guys are sending me in different directions here. Larry Hardstein, does it matter where the diffusers? Yes, it does. So what I tell folks is work with companies that will help engineer a system just for your pond. You know, Vertex, Casco, those folks will take a look at the way your pond is shaped, ask you some questions about the depths, they'll design a system. Because, well, here, let me justify that. I don't want to just sit here and say, yeah, it matters. Let me tell you why it matters. I've gotten to be a bigger believer that fish, especially in the summer when the water gets hot, they need a thermal refuge. And if you're moving water from too deep, then what you're doing is you're eliminating the thermal refuge. Fish, they care a little bit less about the volume of oxygen than they do the temperature. Now, all this is a little different for each species of fish. Bluegill are different than bass, which are different than catfish, which are different than walleye, which are different than smallmouth. So each one's got a little bit different, needs. And I think having a strategy of aeration is a pretty smart thing. So Jeremy Day, okay, so on my book, here's what happened there. I think I told you guys this a few weeks ago, but my oldest son said, hey, Dad, you've really got some cool stories. You've led a pretty cool life. I mean, he's like talking to me in past tense. Like, dude, I'm still here. What's that? And he says, and I really do wish you'd write them all down. And so what he did was he bought me a subscription to Storyworth starting January the 1st. So each week I get a question. Some of them are trivial and meaningless and stupid, but I answer every one of them. Some of them have a little depth to them. So basically what his idea was to throw some random questions at me and let me answer them. So I did that. But I also sat down and I wrote down about 60 of my life stories of stuff that's happened to me over time. Well, my intent was, I think I told you guys, I know I did, was to just share this with my kids. Well, Chico, my good buddy Mike Garcia, Chico came and we videoed we videoed 57 stories over about a 3-day period. So my kids would have them. My son Jonathan, the bird dog guy, he said, Dad, I really want you not only to write them all down, but man, we'd love for you to video those stories. So we went to different venues, different settings, and we videoed all these stories over a 2.5-day span. Well, after Chico heard them and saw them, he said, dude, he said, this is some stuff, there's some life lessons in these stories. Some of these things that happen to you, like the fish truck wreck, your house burning down, all these different things that have happened over your life. That's some life lessons that people might be interested in. Well, he completely changed the paradigm. So now I'm hoping to have this book done by the end of the year and put it out there on the marketplace. So I'll have a book signing at your house, Jeremy, Day, out there on the bank of your lake. We will sell one book unless I give it to you. Oh, that just made me laugh at myself. All right, let's see here. I got more questions here. Uh-oh, I see Jim Allen is getting cute. Let me see what he says here. Hold on. Got to scroll down. Author's pro tip, don't talk about your old girlfriends. That is a pro tip. It goes deeper than a tip. Uh-oh, I saw Stan Lee on here. Stan, dude, what are you doing, man? How's life down on the river? We're in shape for the shape we're in. Yep, well, you know what? I'm getting less round. So good to see you, my friend. You're a good man, and thank you for your service. He is, Stan Lee is a veteran. And let me tell you something. I've met a lot of patriots, but Stan Lee is as patriotic a man as you'll ever meet. He stands for the flag, he stands for God, he stands for our country, and he stands to serve, and he always has. So there's a shout out to Stan Lee, and I mean it or I wouldn't have said it. Let's see here, Mark Hicks. Question about fall preparation for my pond. Would you heavily cull underperforming copper-nosed bluegill in the fall to give the overachieving bluegill a head start for next spring, or should I leave the underperforming bluegill in my pond for the winter months? Those underperformers, it kind of depends on how big they are. If they're small enough that your channel catch and hybrid striped bass can eat them, leave them in there. You know, the thing about underperforming bluegills is they're typically timid, and it's not that they're underperforming because they suck. It's because they're underperforming because they're not getting involved in that food chain. So when I see underperforming copper-nosed bluegill, and you've got bluegill that are performing, that suggests to me that you've got some food hogs. So here's what I'm going to tell you about that. Don't take any out unless there's 30 to 40% of your bluegill are underperforming. You can harvest them next fall, next spring, just as easily as you can harvest them this fall. Hey Jim, did I talk about an old girlfriend, or was that you? All right, Jeremy, I'll bring the table. You got to provide the chairs. John Larson, does discount code Bob Lusk get us a deal on bird dogging it? It's bird dog it, not dogging. There's no dogging in that. Bird dog it. I don't know. Ask Jonathan. You know, that's Jonathan's deal. I wouldn't be surprised if he pitched something out there like a free T-shirt or something. I don't know what he'd do. All right, so I'm going to, you know what, 708. I'm going to dig into here to see what I can find. Yep, John Henry messaged me, so I'm trying to go to Facebook. Let me get here. I'm going to find some more of these questions. There were some pretty good ones here, so. All right, let me see here. Lauren Ashley Mays. Okay, you guys do. Y'all might remember her. It was last winter. It was cold as heck, and she was asking about what kind of glitter to put on the ice. And I actually totally love that question. Oh, there's Chris Blood. I was hoping he'd chime in. Put us down as your first customer for your next book. All right, you get it for free. Well, I don't know. A Peruvian. Hey, you know what? I am putting some recipes in that book. Some of my go-tos. Chris, what you got to do is you and Mary have to help me with the Peruvian ceviche recipe. Send it to me. Make sure. You guys are so cute. Harson, dang it. Oh, you wouldn't wear a hat. You know what? You're one of those guys. If I sent you a hat, you'd put it on backwards anyway. That's kind of a deal, right? Yeah, Chris. Hey, tell Mary to send me that ceviche recipe. Unless I've already published it, which I don't care. Send it on. Uh-oh, I'm getting to the end of the vodka tonic. Okay, so here we go. I covered several of these. Mark Dyer, nutrient abatement in ponds, both the high nitrogen conditions and high phosphorus conditions. Treatment options for high and low budget levels to regain control. So here's the way that you got to manage nutrients. You got to turn them into something else. You got to turn them into aquatic plants and then turn them into flesh. If you can manage your aquatic nutrients, most people manage their aquatic nutrients with flushing. So that means you got to go back to what Dave Davidson was talking about with that rain dance. You got to have a rain dance. You get it to, flushing. Doug Cusick, I'll buy your book too. Hey man, as long as my left hand works, which is the one I write with, I will sign every book. I got to find out how much they're going to cost. I got to write a great big check to publish his book. That book's going to be 300 pages. Oh, well, you'll read it. If you won't, you'll get somebody to read it to you. That's what I do. All right, so Mark Dyer, nutrient baby. Okay, so here's the way you got to look at nutrients. If you're getting more nutrient input than you have output, then you got to deal with it. So basically what he's saying here is are there techniques you can use to sequester phosphorus? Yes, you can sequester phosphorus. But the reason you want to sequester phosphorus is because it's not in balance with the rest of the nutrient load. So the three fundamental nutrients that get converted to something green in water is nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, potash. Those are the three. Potash is the one that's really insignificant. There's always enough of that. But when you get an imbalance between nitrogen and phosphorus, that's when you start getting blue-green algae issues. So trying to keep a balance of that is the hard part. You have too many geese, then you've got nitrogen levels that are excessive. If your nitrogen levels are low, then you get blue-green algae. Look up Floating Islands International. Bruce Kanya, a longtime friend of mine, he spent most of his adult life trying to figure out how to convert too much phosphorus, not quite enough nitrogen, into plant mass with his floating islands. So if you truly have a situation where you've got too much nitrogen, too much phosphorus, then I would look at the expenditure of pumping water through an artificial wetlands to allow plants to consume as much of that nutrient load as they can. So if you've got the means to do that, then I would. Let's see here. We're still developing our wildlife area around the lake. I planted 16 apple trees for deer this weekend by it. The wood ducks and geese have found it. We had 22 geese. Well, good luck with that. You know what? I absolutely love developing wildlife areas. I'm spending quite a bit of time studying about getting a little bit, I'm kind of peeling back the layers of riparian areas. I've always known that they're valuable. I've always understood some of the plants. But what I haven't really taken a deep dive into is that area just from the water line up maybe 30 vertical feet and how all that's integrated and vertically integrated and related. But I absolutely know this. When you've got water, it's incumbent on you to not only manage the water line, because what you're doing, this is a big deal here. Here's the quote of the day. Y'all write this down. Everybody get a pen. What you do below the water line is going to affect what happens at the water line and above. I see it over and over and over, and I'm very passionate about that. It's a big, big deal to be able to take care of what you have under the water with serious regard and deeper thought to what happens at the water line and then above it. So dig into that. I love me some Chris Blood. How did I know? Okay, here I am. Let me tell you, Chris, I love you, buddy. Let me tell you this. Here's my deal. I can remember almost every pond I've ever seen. Almost. Not all of them, because 45 years is a long damn time. But I cannot remember a single word that I write. That's why I better be telling the truth so I don't have to remember it. So, you know what? I will You can send it to my inbox, but I will also go back because I know I've got pictures because I made it or I wouldn't have done it. So let's see here. I love me some Chris Blood. Jeremy Day, still need to add more lime into the pond, waiting on the cool weather. Will I need to continue to put more lime over the years? Well, I tell you what, you tell me how much water is going to flow in and out, because that's going to give me the answer, Jeremy, as to whether or not you're going to need more lime. I know this, if you overdo it, the lime leaves when it gets flushed out. So when you get some of those big-ass rains like you had not too long ago, then you're going to have to add more lime. If you have those, 2 or 3 times a year, or once or twice a year, or whatever. Jeremy Day, can you give an example? Okay, so let me tell you what. Here's what I mean by the water line thing. I'm going to leave my phone open here so I can come back to these questions. 760. Okay, so, all right. I'll give you a perfect example of that. Jeremy Day from Plantersville, America, down around Navasota, Montgomery. When you've got the right kind of habitat underwater that's conducive to grow the different sizes of the different species of fish, you've created a fishery. But one of the side benefits is you're also going to create things that happen above the waterline. So when you start creating that great fishery, you may end up with an osprey nest in one of those big trees just adjacent to your pond. Guess what they eat? They're going to eat some of your fish. So you can say, damn those birds, or you can say, whoa, how cool is this? Another thing that happens is when you've got the right kind of habitat, you're going to grow damselfly nymphs. You're going to grow bullfrog tadpoles. You're going to have dragonflies. And dragonflies eat mosquitoes. But guess what eats dragonflies? Songbirds. So you're going to create an ecology below the waterline that's going to mature and come out, that's going to influence the next 1 foot to 5 feet above the waterline. So you're going to create a food chain in essence. You're going to be able to attract more wildlife to come and drink the water or to come participate in the water at some level. You're going to create vegetation or allow the opportunity for plants to grow that's going to attract certain creatures that eat it, whether it's snails or migratory game birds or migratory, waterfowl, whatever, that are going to want to come and play there. You're going to grow plants around the edges like smartweed. Fish love to hide in it. Waterfowl love to eat it. So do doves, if they can get to the seeds without getting their feet too wet. So the things that you're doing below the waterline have a direct influence on what happens right above the waterline. I remember going to Richmond Mill Lake down in Laurel Hill near Laurinburg, North Carolina. 135-acre lake built in 1835 with mules, Fresnos, and slave labor to harness water to turn a grist mill. Well, they drained the lake because they had to repair the dam. They had some issues. There were 5 hurricanes that came through there in the late 1990s, early 2000s. So they drained the lake and rebuilt the dam, and then they spent so much money on the dam they had to turn that lake into a revenue-producing asset. So that was my job, was to help grow some good fish, help them create a business model where they could create enough revenue to justify and create and recover the money it took to rebuild the dam. Well, as we started managing that lake, it was like 6,000 gallons per minute overflowing this big U-shaped or rectangular-shaped spillway, concrete spillway. The water was 5.3 pH, looked like iced tea. We propped it up with fish feeders. We had 50 fish feeders on that lake. Well, what we started seeing soon was here comes all kinds of other creatures above the waterline that were dependent on that lake. So feeding the fish in that lake and creating the opportunities and enhancing the environment and the habitat gave all these insects and abundance of fish that could feed more animals, more predators, which was a problem since the goal was to create a fishery. And what we did was we actually overproduced. We produced more than that lake was naturally capable of carrying or producing by itself. I'm not going to say carrying. We never reached carrying capacity. But when that happened, we had a bounty. And nature doesn't allow that. Nature never allows a bounty. She won't allow a deficit. She won't allow a bounty. So what we started seeing was things going on above the waterline. I mean, I can vividly remember we had to go in right at dusk or get carried away with mosquitoes, and I didn't want to die in North Carolina from West Nile virus. Who would, right? Well, about a year and a half or two years into it, we started seeing that we could stay out past dusk. The mosquitoes number started to drop. Well, why was that? I totally believe it was because of the numbers of dragonflies that were growing there. Well, guess what eats dragonflies? So there's an example of that. Jeremy Day, so you create an estuary. Well, if it was salt water, it would be an estuary. All right, John Harson, is there a recommendation on how many bullfrog tadpoles to add to 2 acres? You need to add enough that turn into bullfrogs that the bass don't eat. So, here's that smart aleck coming out of me. You know, for a 2-acre pond, like what you're doing, John, if you've got a half-acre pond somewhere else, put about 50 in that one, but add 300 or 400 into a 2-acre pond if you get them. But here's the thing about bullfrog tadpoles. It takes them 2 years to mature. So there's really not a good idea of a stocking rate. And then here's the problem. Let's say you stock 200 in a 2-acre pond, and they get to be bullfrogs 2 years in, and 30 of them make it, and they don't like it, they leave. So I'll tell you this. Here's my answer to that. That's a good question. You made me think about it. Here's what I think about bullfrog tadpoles. If they've got the right habitat and the right water, you don't need but 10 of them in a half-acre pond. Because if those can mature, those 10 can mature and survive being eaten by a great blue heron or a 5-pound bass, then they're going to replenish themselves. But when you got a predator-heavy situation, chances are they're not going to establish. So then your stocking rate might as well be 500 per acre. Okay, Ron Crimson. Hey, Bob, let's say you have a half-acre pond with food chain of fathead minnows, perch, and smallmouth bass. If you decide to feed the fish, what % more fish could you support? That's going to be directly related to the amount of fish that will eat that fish food. So fathead minnows, once they start to rear their little heads up and eat that fish food, they're going to get annihilated by the perch and the smallmouth bass. So the perch are going to be the fish of choice that will eat that fish food. There might be a handful of smallmouth bass that will come to those pellets. But the perch are going to be the ones, and there'll be a percentage of those. And perch, they're a little bit better at training to fish food than other fish are, except for bluegills. So what percentage more fish? I'm going to say you could probably support another 50 to 80% more yellow perch. Probably not any more bass or any more fatheads. Ian, you're welcome. Ron checking in 1 minute ago, a little bit late. So look at Chris loving on me some. So how does somebody hire me? They write a big check. Well, maybe not that big a check. Well, I don't know. You know what? If somebody wants me to help them create a fisheries plan or design a fishing lake, I've been designing some fishing lakes lately, and that is really, really, really fun. I love doing that. That's a huge amount of fun. And did I tell you to go to Texas Hunter Products and look at the new dog feeders? You need to do that. Chris Blood can tell you how to do that. He'll post that here in a minute. He'll give you a direct link on how to look at their dog feeders. So if somebody wants to talk to me, send me an email. Just send it to boblusk@outlook.com or info@pondboss.com. Either one of those will work. I see both of those. And holy cow, it must be getting late. And I'd be happy to talk to you. If it's something I can do, I'll be happy to help you, and I'll tell you what it's going to cost before I show up. I'm not one of those guys that says, yeah, sure, I'll be happy to help you. Here's a check, or here's an invoice for 6.2 something. Yep, but I'd love to do that. I'm still doing it. I can't stop. Chris, since you've asked, here's the deal. About a year ago, I was really, really thinking hard about slowing down. Back then I was 68. I'm 69 now, and I'm thinking, you know what? I got to slow down. Then I got this dadgum freaking phone call in February telling me that I had been elected into the Texas Freshwater Fishing Hall of Fame. There's no chance I'm going to slow down. I don't want to. When something like that happens to a guy like me, you just got to sit back and say, you know what? There's a calling. And when you have that calling, you better answer it. So it made me want to ramp up. So I'm going to keep ramping up. There's your link for Texas Hunter products. Y'all give me about 2 more minutes and go look at it. Hey, Virgil. Good to see you, buddy. My good friend from Iowa. It's what I do, man. I'm happy to do it. Let's see. John Harson. Send that email months in advance. That's only if you want free advice. Yeah, you take that shot. Katie, what are you doing, girl? What do you mean that's terrible? Stop it. Yeah, you know what? I'm not going to slow down. I don't have time. It's so much fun. You know what? Let me tell you about Katie Burke. Katie Burke works for the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department. She's their events coordinator. She's the one putting together this Hall of Fame thing. And I'm telling you, I am so glad I don't even have to think about it. She's on top of it. She's got it organized. I know that she's heard from my wife probably a little bit more than she wanted to, but my wife is excited too. So we can't wait to celebrate, and I can't wait to hang out. Yeah, look at Harson. Yeah, suck up, dog. I see what you're doing. So, hey, guys. Hey, there's John Wilson checking in from Ohio. I'm always glad to see Big John. Big Frog Wilson, Aquadoc. Check out Aquadoc, guys. John Wilson is a stellar superstar in the fisheries management business and the pond management business. He's more so into water quality and aquatic plant management and stuff, but he's got it going on with fishery stuff too. So you guys check out, after I hang up here, you guys check in with John Wilson. You guys check in with Chris Blood. And Katie, thanks for checking in tonight. Can't wait to hang out on October the 11th. And Virgil, I know I'm not supposed to slow down yet. I'm kind of ramping up. It's really fun. I want to live a little longer. So, hey, guys, we're getting toward the end of this deal. It's 58 minutes in. So I think I'm going to kind of wrap it up right here, say adios for now, and go hang out with my wife and go have a little bit of late night supper. Hey, you're welcome, Big John. Let's holler. Let's talk one of these days. We need to catch up. It's been too long. So, hey, adios for now. I'll see you guys next week, wherever I am. I don't know what the date is, but I'll be somewhere. And if I have a cell connection or internet connection and I'm not being dragged away to go to some party, then I'll be here. So adios for now, everybody.